I mean, back in Superman 2, she shot Clark Kent.
Now, Lois, now don't be crazy now. What?
She pulled out a gun. I was like, I'm going to shoot you. I know you're Superman. And she shot him. Hello, I just wanted to thank you for clicking on my video. And I wanted to let you know, not only do I create content in my YouTube channel here, Class in a Glass, but I'm also on Twitch where I play single-player games, multiplayer games. I do movie reviews, cartoon reviews, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Also, it would be a big help if you can check out my Patreon, where you can gain access to audio commentaries, reactions, and the ability to submit questions for my podcasts and videocast. And all that content can be found in the links below. In the meantime, enjoy the video. I want to go ahead and review my adventures with Superman, episodes 5 and 6. And for those that don't know, I've been doing consistent reviews pretty much every time they've released, 2 episodes, not doing on a episode per episode basis. I want at least 2. An hour of content so I can go in depth with my critiques of this show. And for those that don't know, the general premise of these 2 particular episodes, while Superman continues to engender himself to the people of Metropolis through his selfless acts, very refreshing by the way, Lois Lane grows increasingly frustrated and hurt with Clark over his obvious lies and cover-ups of being the Man of Steel, while Jimmy Olsen feels neglected by the two and accidentally puts himself in great danger. As I said before, chat, for these reviews, it's just been really satisfying and refreshing to see a version of Superman who really enjoys saving people. For the past decade or so, we've gotten a lot of adaptations of Superman, certainly theatrically, where that has not been the focus.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
Instead of being a selfless hero, I would argue he's being a more selfish hero and not caring about innocent people. And so I feel like the creators of this series, the writers, they went in with that mindset going like, listen, we want to portray Superman as this guy who's like, first of all, he just wants to live a normal life, really. He wants to get a job, which I can identify with. He's like, he just wants to have some consistency. He wants to have a stable life. He wants to have a good job. He wants to hang out with his friends. He wants to date this girl he has a crush on. It's like very, very relatable, chat. But he is blessed with this unimaginable power. And despite kind of wanting to hide from that and just live a normal life, he realizes like, I can use these abilities to help so many people, and I can't just ignore when people are in trouble. And so that's just been amazing in this show. I just like, oh my God, it's so cathartic. But because of that decision to try to balance his life, by being Superman and also trying to be, ace reporter, Clark Kent, or budding reporter Clark Kent, that's caused some difficulties. And we see a lot of that kind of come to a head in episode 5, which is aptly named, "You Will Believe a Man Can Lie," which there's a lot of lying. Now, to be fair, Superman's not the only character that's been lying in this show. Some other characters have been lying too. But, he's been holding a pretty big lie. And most of this episode, I would say, is definitely focused on Lois and Clark's relationship, which, again, I think has been absolutely adorable in this series. Ever since episode 1, like the two of them have instantaneous chemistry, chat. You like when they're together. You like all the little funny, cutesy stuff that they do with one another. It's so adorable. And so it's sad to see them now in some sort of conflict where, based on episode 4, Lois has come to realize that, Clark's been lying to me. He not only does he know about Superman, he actually is Superman. So this whole episode is basically her just trying to catch Clark in a lie and also catch Superman in a lie. And that leads to some pretty funny comedic scenarios in which he's trying to run around the city as Superman is saving everyone. I mean, literally stopping a car from hitting someone in the street, stopping a subway from running over some fat kid, to rescuing a cat from a lamppost, Chad. She's just going, oh, Jesus, oh God, like it's pretty cute. I really love that. But you know, the central conflict in this episode, it's like, yeah, we get some action. Don't worry, we'll get to all that in a bit. But the central conflict is just, you know, Lois and Clark need to be honest with each other, and you know that creates a lot of friction, and that there is an inciting moment, which some people have taken umbrage with, honestly. And I'm gonna push back on that. But you know, it's the two of them finally kind of starting to be honest with each other, but in a way that it led to extreme means. And I think that's one of the big criticisms people have had of this episode. I think just a lot of people just, you know, don't like this Lois Lane. I think this Lois Lane is great because, one, she's consistent with all the Lois Lanes we've ever had in the past, chat. I mean, she's very similar to, of course, the Lois Lane that we had in Superman the Animated Series. Very similar to the Lois Lane that we've had in the classic Superman movies. Certainly the ones in Christopher Reeve, at the very least the first two. And this is a minor spoiler for this episode, but a lot of people have, I guess, taken umbrage with the moment in which Lois convinces Clark to prove, or really forces Clark to reveal that he's Superman. And in which he's like, you know what? I'm just going to jump off this building. If you're Superman, you're going to catch me. And so that's what happens, you know. And then inevitably, you know, she's like, I knew it. She's like, she's like hitting his chest and stuff, and she feels betrayed. You know, she feels like Clark's been manipulating her, and Clark's like, it's more complicated than that. And you see his fear with not wanting to share this secret with people because he doesn't even know what he really is. That's the other thing too. Like, he doesn't know about Krypton at this point, Chad. He doesn't know about Kal-El, right? He's still so confused, and but all he knows is that he has these powers. He knows he can help people. But he's very cagey about letting a lot of people into his life knowing that about him. And I honestly found that realistic. I could identify with something like that. That made a lot of sense. And people are saying, like, how can she do that? She's very toxic. I'm like, listen, you know, you say that was the wrong thing to do? One of the way not to approach that situation? Sure. But that's consistent with Lois Lane in general. I mean, back in Superman 2, she shot Clark Kent.
No, Lois, now don't be crazy now. What?
She pulled out a gun. I was like, I'm going to shoot you. I know you're Superman. And she shot him. And then even in Superman the Animated Series, she's always been, you know, a little testy stuff. She's always been stubborn, testy, sarcastic, hot-headed, right? Passionate. That's a part of her character. And so there's nothing in these episodes that's like, oh, that's a far departure for Lois Lane. It's like, no. How they're writing her is how she is in multiple comics that I've read and in multiple adaptations. If anything, it's just very consistent. And Alice Lee, who does the voice of her, I think has been doing a terrific job. I mean, all the voice actors, I feel like, have been doing a terrific job. You know, everyone from you know, Jack Quaid. Alice Lee, of course, plays Lois Lane, and Ishmael Saeed is Jimmy Olsen. But yeah, that's the one thing I'm definitely going to push back on in regards to that, because I feel like that was par for the course with Lois in this show and in other shows and movies that we've had over the 40, 50 years, right? It's not unusual at all. And so I liked how they portrayed that. And it's like, oh, it sets up like more conflict for the next episode. Certainly in episode 6, where it's like, okay, we had that big inciting moment. Now, how do we deal with it? How do we process it, right? I also like that, you know, Jimmy's getting a little more focus, you know, here. My only criticism is, so I like it that Jimmy, because everything that's going on with Lois and Clark, he feels left out. He feels neglected. He feels like they're not being respectful of his friendship and what he's done for both of them. And he's feeling depressed. It's also made worse that he has like a troll, an online troll bashing all of his videos. Cause was it Flamebird? Flamebird, like that's his, you know, video series where he's like this version of Jimmy Olsen. He's obsessed with, you know, the paranormal, the supernatural, aliens and things, wanting to prove all that, you know, conspiracy, you know, he's a conspiracy theorist. And one of the kind of big moments in the episode, is him dealing with like this troll that's just been trashing his content, and you find out that it's like, it's Steve Lombard, and and I have to admit, like, Steve Lombard, like, he's always been a jerk in the comics. Like, that's what he is. He is the loudmouth sports reporter that has very little respect for his fellow reporters. He has little office decorum. He's a sexist, a misogynist. He's the whole 9 yards, right? And I felt like, and again, not the voice actor's fault, it's how he's being directed. But I felt like, and maybe it's a combination of like, okay, he's supposed to be annoying, but he's so annoying that I'm like, all right, I kind of had enough of this character. It's a little too much. It's a little too extra, the performance. Even though he kind of has a moment. This was kind of interesting. Like, surprisingly, they kind of throw you for a loop, get a little whiplash, where they'll go like, this guy's obnoxious, he's annoying, but then they'll have something in there where he's like, well, I'm like this because I've kind of lost everyone in my life and I'm lonely and I'm just trying to make up for it. It's like, oh my god, I kind of like, they'll abandon you, Jimmy. They'll all leave you. Just be on your own. Be like me. Be a courageous wanderer of this earth. And I was like, oh, that's interesting for Steve Lombard. In terms of the kind of like, outside of the relationship stuff and then the character stuff, and we do have, of course, the big bads here, the trifecta of the general, who I'm like, I know exactly who the general is now. Now it makes a lot of sense who the general is. But we also have Amanda Waller, of course, runs Task Force S, creator of the Suicide Squad, and also Slade Wilson, voiced by Chris Parnell, which is unusual casting, but really, really works for me. And we do see like Superman go up against Slade Wilson. Again, they don't call him Deathstroke, but he's pretty much wearing a proto version of the Deathstroke armor in this episode, and I like that. And the thing is, like, this was kind of cool. I think some people are mad at this. It's controversial. This is very much a depowered Superman. This is very much a Superman who is struggling against someone like a Deathstroke, who has like this kind of exosuit who can take him on. And I kind of like that. It's like when he gets slashed with his like sci-fi swords, like he gets cut, his skin gets cut. There's burn marks on him, and he's struggling with that. And I thought that was awesome. Also, I'm sure people were like weirded out by casting Chris Parnell as Slade Wilson. The way he's playing him I think is really cool, because he's like a sadist. He like really, really enjoys like hunting people, hurting people. Like, he gets off on it, like in the comics, like in a lot of adaptations with Deathstroke, like I would never describe him as a sadist. He's kind of like, that professional assassin. Like, hey, this is my job. This is my task. I'm going to complete that job no matter what it is. He follows like a code. He's an honorable man to a degree, right? Here, he's just like, I just like hurting people. And the way in which Chris Parnell is playing that is, one, it's just kind of unique for him because, typically Chris Parnell, he's known for playing goofy characters, or people or characters that are always put upon, by others. Like, Jerry from Rick and Morty. Loser.
What?
Cyril Figgis from Archer.
Hello.
And so to see him play a role in which he's kind of a crazy sadistic assassin, I think that's refreshing, and it just happens to be Deathstroke. Like, he's kind of spooky, he's kind of scary, and so I really like that. I really, really enjoyed that in the episode. So some of the Steve Lombard stuff didn't work for me. I thought it was a little too obnoxious, but I do like the reveal that he's like, hey man, you just got to think about you. Think about number one, numero uno. That was a little extra. I didn't care for that. And of course, all the stuff with Lois and Clark I thought was great. Their interactions, both the comedic stuff and the more dramatic things in this episode, and just the kind of the breaking down of their relationship. It ends on a very dark note, but then it ends on a funny note, because apparently Jimmy has been kidnapped by Bigfoot. Because that's the thing he wanted to do. He wanted to go on this camping trip to try to find Bigfoot. And, well, he is kidnapped by a Sasquatch-esque creature, and that leads into episode 6, which I do think is an even better episode than episode 5. I think it's a stronger episode. It's a little tighter. I think it's a little more well-written. We get some more context. We get some better interactions between certainly our main trifecta, our main trio group of characters, but also new interpretations of villains, which I know this whole series has been doing. But we also get some new interpretations of villains in a way that, again, is really cool, and it's different. And this one, of course, is my adventures with mad science. And pretty much the whole premise is after Jimmy is kidnapped by the Sasquatch, Lois and Clark have to work together, despite their very strained relationship. Lois, she still has, again, when she nuzzled her face in between those big old man titties.
Ah, Lois, are you okay?
She's like, oh my God, he's beautiful. He's a beautiful, stupid man. I love him. But, she's feeling conflicted about it right now. And the whole episode is mostly them kind of going back and forth and Clark being, a combination of being frustrated, but also seeing her point to the same degree, but also him showing like a lot of vulnerability. And I think a lot of people say like, oh, Superman, he's boring. He's always, I was like, upstanding and always about the American way and stuff like that. That's what he is. He's a big old big blue Boy Scout. And I like seeing this Superman who's constantly vulnerable. Like we're seeing his insecurities. He wears them on his sleeves constantly, right? It's like, yes, he is this very powerful superhero, all these amazing powers that he's still discovering, but he's still like really insecure of himself. And he doesn't want to open up to people because he doesn't want to be hurt. And a lot of that is what's discussed between Lois and Clark in this episode when they're trying to look for Jimmy in the wilderness outside of Metropolis. And all that stuff, how that's all handled, I think was very good. And even Lois, like she's, when she learns that Clark is like scared about, revealing who he was to everyone that he's close to, she's like, well, did you just make up all the stuff about you caring for me, about you liking me? And he's like, he's confused, and he doesn't feel that way because he does have feelings for her. And I thought it was adorable. I thought it was great. And then we get to the Jimmy, and the Jimmy stuff is like Jimmy also kind of, figuring himself out by talking to two characters I didn't think would appear in this series. And we have the Brain and Monsieur Mala, Chad, who have often been portrayed as villains in multiple DC comics. You guys might be more familiar with them as the main villains from Teen Titans Season 4, running an evil organization trying to capture superhumans and exploit their abilities for their own evil, nefarious plans. But here, I love the backstory between the Brain and Monsieur Mala, who are like the products of Cadmus experiments. Because they introduce a lot of DC and Superman lore in this episode, chat. You get mentions of Cadmus, you get mentions of Task Force X, the Suicide Squad.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
You get all of that in this episode, but you get to see these new versions of the Brain and Monsieur Mala, and they're straight up with the chat. These two are stooping each other. Which has always kind of been hinted at in the comics. I mean, I'm sure they've been more honest about it, in years since then. I'm sure they've all gone like, oh no, these two, they're lovers. But here it's just like, because you see like their whole history, why they're hiding from the world, why they're in this secret facility that no one's been to for quite some time because of bad things that happened to them like 2 decades ago. And you see the origins of them, why Brain became just a brain in a jar in a little robot body, because they've been isolated for so long, because they just have each other, they are straight up lovers. And their relationship, like their teasing of one another, little nicknames for each other, I think that is all super sweet and really cute. I thought it was adorable, Chad, and not what I expected at all. And I'm sure that's gonna piss a lot of people off that the evil Brain and Monsieur Mala are pretty much good guys in this episode, chat, and they just want to be accepted and just be with each other. I thought it's like, oh, that's great. So much. I've said this before in my early reviews. So much of My Adventures of Superman is a very slice of life anime. Which for those who don't know, slice of life anime, it's just more. It's not like following people like fighting epic battles like Dragon Ball Z. It's just more like, hey, we're just trying to get through our lives and try to establish relationships and loving relationships and trying to, do our jobs right. There's a lot of that here. And they apply it to certain characters you wouldn't ordinarily think would have that applied to them. But I think it's great. I think they're handling that very, very well. And, by the end of the episode, we have our characters, both Clark and Lois and Jimmy. They're able to talk things out like adults. There's a big reveal in regards to what Jimmy actually knows about Clark, which I thought was quite sweet and quite nice and funny. But they're like, hey, okay, we can... we're finally honest with each other. You know, what's past is past. You know, we've learned from it. Like, we can move on and we can be better people. I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love stuff like that. It's like, yes. You know, I'm glad they didn't just have because, you know, I'm glad they didn't continue on like, oh, you know, well, you know, Jimmy and Lois find out if Clark is Superman in 5 seasons. It's like, no, by episode 6, let's get this over with. Let's just move forward and be better people. I'm just like, thank you, because that's all I want. And at the same time, this episode wraps up with a really good cliffhanger, chat, where we see the return of another villain who we saw previously in episode 4, really new incarnation of them. Which is like, oh, this is kind of weird and gross. I thought that was neat. And also at this point, you know, I'm ready to believe who the general is. I'm pretty sure I know who the general actual is in this series so far. I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but it's like, I think it's clearly Lois Lane's dad, but whatever, because they keep dropping hints. I'm just like, and he's also, I would say, like, his features, I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's Asian, and this version of Lois is Asian, so I'm like, this guy is her dad. So, yeah, I'm excited for when that's all going to come to a head, because it's like, why is Lois Lane's dad, General Lane, hunting Superman? Why is Amanda Waller after him? Why is Deathstroke after him? You know, what's Task Force X endgame with this? Why are they, you know, going after all these superpowered people with this technology that's very Kryptonian-esque, right? So there's a lot at stake. So they are building something, and we're already past the halfway point. I think there's only 10 episodes this season. So it does make me excited to see how they're going to wrap things up. I hope it goes on. It's the other thing too. I hope this isn't a one-off, because I've been really enjoying it. I have no idea what the ratings have been like on Adult Swim or on HBO Max, or Maxi as it's called in some circles. But I hope it continues. I would love to see maybe like a new DC animated universe spin off from this. You know, I want to see My Adventures of Batman. I want to see My Adventures with Wonder Woman, you know, and they all kind of interact with each other. I think that could be a lot of fun. And these episodes so far, again, kind of wrap up that these episodes have been a lot of fun. It's giving us a Superman I think we haven't really seen in a long time, you know? We've certainly got some great adaptations over the years, everything from Christopher Reeve to the Tim Daly Superman animated series to everything within the DCAU. But, you know, we've gotten a lot of bad Superman content over the years. So to see something that's different, but at the same time harkens back to the good, wholesome, morally righteous, kind-hearted Superman days, that's great for me. And just kind of new, fun interpretations of familiar characters. You know, it gives them a new coat of paint and does things with them that are unexpected. And that personally work for me. Not work for everybody, but certainly work for me. There's some issues where I think they might go a little extra on some characters and dialogue. But overall, I think this show has been great. And I think it also serves as a nice gateway, a very good gateway to DC animation and the character of Superman. I think if you have maybe like someone in your life who loves anime, but they never really exposed to superheroes or like DC animation, this might be a nice gateway for him to get into that, because it has all the accoutrements of an anime in terms of the character designs and the animation, the choreography, chat, you know, which is different for DC animation. We don't often see that. Mostly been Western, not so much Eastern. So, but yeah, overall, chat, really, really enjoyed My Adventures of Superman. What about you guys out there? Are you still liking these episodes? What did you think of the previous episode? What do you think of episode 5 and 6? And what do you think is going to happen as we get towards the end to episode 10? Let me know.
I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.